I never thought a sound as small as a zipper could change the way I looked at someone. But that night, in the soft glow of her bedroom lamp, I realized I wasn't just the boy next door anymore. Her name was Claire. She was my father's age, well, close enough. Mid-40s, with that tired grace people carry when life has scraped them raw and left them standing anyway. Dad had just left, stormed out, actually, and the silence he left behind seemed heavier than the walls of the house. I stood in the kitchen, unsure if I should go too, when I heard her call from the hallway. "Could you?" Her voice trailed off, half hidden behind the doorframe. I turned. She was in a navy dress, the kind that caught the light in folds and shadows. Her back faced me, bare except for the stubborn zipper stuck at the curve of her spine. She didn't look at me, just held the fabric against her chest with one hand, waiting. My throat tightened. "Yeah, sure." I crossed the floor slower than I meant to, my palms suddenly damp. She tilted her head slightly but still didn't turn around. The room smelled faintly of her perfume, something warm, like amber and rain-soaked wood. I reached for the zipper. My fingers brushed her skin, and she flinched just barely, so lightly it could have been my imagination. I hesitated. "Sorry," I whispered. "It's fine," she said quickly, but her voice was thinner than usual. The zipper slid halfway before it stuck again. My other hand rose instinctively, steadying her shoulder. I felt the tension under her skin, the way she was holding herself too still, as if breathing too deeply might give something away. "I think it's caught," I muttered. She cleared her throat. "Take your time." Her words were simple, but they landed heavier than they should have. "Take your time." As if she didn't mind me standing there, my hand against her back, the air between us stretched tight and fragile. I finally coaxed the zipper up, the tiny metal teeth snapping into place. My hand lingered longer than it should have. She noticed, I know she did. "Thank you," she said softly, still facing away. "You're welcome." My voice cracked, betraying me. When she finally turned, her eyes caught mine, gray-green, tired but alive in a way I hadn't seen before. There was something unspoken there, something I wasn't supposed to notice, but couldn't unsee now. She gave a half-smile, the kind you wear when you're trying to hide too much. And in that moment, I wanted to say something, anything, that would make her keep looking at me like that. But the words died before they could leave my mouth. The silence stretched. Too quiet. The kind of quiet where the smallest sound feels like thunder. Her fingers brushed her neckline, fidgeting. I should check if he's really gone," she murmured. But she didn't move toward the door. Neither did I. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips, in my throat, in the space between us. There was no father in the room anymore, no neighborly distance, no excuses, just her, and me, and the zipper I had just pulled shut. And then, as if the universe couldn't stand the stillness any longer, her phone buzzed on the dresser. The screen lit up, and her face changed instantly, whatever softness had been there drained in an instant. She didn't pick it up. Instead, she whispered, Don't say anything about this." And for reasons I couldn't explain, I nodded. But my eyes stayed on her, and hers lingered on me, like we'd both crossed a line without meaning to. The phone buzzed again. And this time, she finally reached for it. The next morning, the house was too quiet. Dad's absence was a hollow space that echoed everywhere, his jacket gone from the hook, his boots missing from the doorway. Claire moved through the kitchen like a shadow, her robe tied too tightly, her hair unbrushed, a coffee mug clutched like armor. I sat across from her, pretending to scroll through my phone, but really just watching her hands. They trembled slightly when she lifted the mug. "Rough night?" I asked. "Stupid question." She gave a dry laugh. "You could say that." Then, after a pause, "He's not coming back this time." I didn't know what to say. My father had walked out before, but he'd always come storming back with apologies or excuses. This time felt different. Claire wasn't angry, she just looked emptied. "Do you want me to leave? Give you space?" I asked. Her eyes flicked up to mine, and for the first time I noticed how red they were, the faint crease lines at the edges from crying she wouldn't admit to. No. Stay. The word came quicker than she meant it to, and she looked down immediately after. I stayed. It was strange, I had always thought of her as untouchable, someone who belonged to another world of wine glasses, silk dresses, and conversations that floated over my head. But now, in her robe with her guard down, she seemed more human than ever. And maybe that was what made it dangerous. Because part of me couldn't stop remembering the way her back felt under my hand last night, how her voice softened when she said take your time. I tried to bury the thought, but it kept resurfacing. You know, she said suddenly, staring into her coffee, when I was your age, I thought love was supposed to fix everything. That if you chose the right person, you'd never feel alone again. She shook her head. Turns out, you can spend 20 years with someone and still feel invisible. Her words hung between us. I wanted to tell her she wasn't invisible, that I saw her, maybe more than she wanted me to. But I bit my tongue. Instead, I asked, do you regret it? Marrying him? Her lips curved into a sad smile. Every day, and yet, I don't know who I'd be without those years. I didn't press further. But inside, something twisted, regret on her end, and a strange ache on mine. Because I wanted to be someone she didn't regret. The kettle whistled on the stove, breaking the heaviness. I stood quickly, grabbed it before it screamed too loud. When I turned back, she was watching me, really watching me. Her gaze lingered longer than it should have, long enough that my chest tightened. I set the kettle down. For a moment, neither of us moved. The only sound was the tick of the clock on the wall. And then, without thinking, I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. Just lightly. She didn't pull away. Her fingers twitched, almost like she might, but then they stilled, warm against mine. She didn't look up. I didn't either. But the silence between us had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It didn't take long for the house to feel smaller. Every glance lingered too long, every silence stretched too wide. I'd find her in the kitchen, her hair pulled back carelessly, and I'd freeze before saying something ordinary. Do you need help with that? Or coffee, as if pretending nothing had changed could erase the fact that everything had. One night, a storm rolled through. Rain hammered the windows, rattling them in their frames. Claire was curled on the couch under a blanket, reading a book she hadn't turned a page of in 20 minutes. I hovered by the doorway, trying to work up the nerve to sit beside her. Finally, she looked up. You don't have to stand there like a stranger, she said softly. I crossed the room, sat at the far end of the couch. But the space between us might as well have been an inch. Her fingers toyed with the corner of the blanket. You shouldn't get too comfortable here, she murmured. I frowned. What do you mean? Her eyes flickered toward me, then away. People talk. And you're young. The word caught in her throat. Too young. I swallowed hard. I'm not a kid. No, she admitted, almost to herself. You're not. The storm filled the silence, thunder rolling low, steady. I could feel her words tugging at both of us. Stay away, come closer. My chest tightened until I couldn't stand it anymore. Claire, I began. But then the front door opened. I jumped, scooting back instinctively. Claire's head snapped up. Mom? A girl's voice rang out, carrying up the stairs. Her daughter. I hadn't seen her in months. She lived in the city, college, I think. My pulse raced. Claire stood quickly, tossing the blanket aside, smoothing her hair. Her expression shifted in an instant, like a curtain dropping over a stage. Stay here, she whispered to me, her voice sharp, urgent. She hurried out to meet her daughter in the hall, her tone bright and casual, too casual. I stayed frozen on the couch, staring at the half-finished book she'd left behind. Their voices drifted in, laughter, then quieter tones I couldn't make out. My throat was dry, my heart thudding so loud I was sure someone would hear it. Minutes stretched until Claire finally reappeared. She closed the living room door behind her, leaned against it, eyes closed. "She can't know," she whispered. "I didn't. I wasn't going to," her gaze cut to mine, sharp, trembling. "She can't. Ever." I nodded, even though a part of me hated it. We stood there, barely breathing, the air charged with all the words we couldn't say. And when she stepped closer, I thought, just for a heartbeat, that she might reach for me, that the storm outside had found its way inside too. But instead, she brushed past me, picked up her book, and sat down again, this time leaving an inch more space than before. The thunder cracked overhead. And neither of us dared move. It was late again. Claire and I sat at the dining table, the only light coming from a small lamp, casting everything in amber shadows. Her daughter had gone back to the city 2 days ago, but the reminder of her presence still hovered, pressing down like a weight neither of us could shake. Claire was quieter than usual, stirring her tea though it had long gone cold. I watched her hand circle the spoon again and again until the sound scraped at me. Finally, I blurted, "Do you regret asking me to stay?" Her hand froze. Slowly, she lifted her eyes to mine. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you haven't looked at me since she left," I said. My voice cracked, sharper than I meant. "Like you're ashamed." She flinched, then shook her head. "You don't understand, then make me understand." The words landed hard, echoing too loud in the quiet house. My pulse raced. I had never spoken to her like that before, never let the frustration spill out. But I couldn't hold it in anymore, the stolen glances, the silence, the way my chest burned every time she pulled away. Her lips parted, but no words came. She pressed her palms flat against the table, steadying herself. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't do this with you." "Why not?" The question ripped out of me. "Because I'm younger? Because of what people will say? Or because you feel it too, and you're scared?" Her chair scraped back. She stood, pacing to the window, gripping the curtain like she might tear it down. Her shoulders rose and fell with shallow breaths. "You think this is simple," she said finally, her voice trembling with anger, or maybe fear. "You don't know what it's like to carry years of mistakes. To wake up next to someone and feel like you're disappearing. And then suddenly, you come along and," her voice cracked, and she pressed a hand to her forehead. "And I can't stop thinking about you." The words stunned the air out of me. She froze too, as if realizing what she'd said too late. My chest ached, heat rising in my throat. I stood slowly, each step toward her louder than the storm that had passed days ago. "You can't take that back," I whispered. Her eyes finally met mine. They glistened, not just with fear, but with something I'd only dreamed she might feel. Her hand shook as she lowered it from the curtain, brushing against mine when I reached out. The touch was barely there, a ghost of contact, but it lit something between us that neither of us could deny anymore. Her breath hitched. My heart pounded. For a moment, the world shrank to nothing but her hand against mine, her lips parting like she might say my name, and then the sound of a car door slammed outside. She yanked her hand back. We both froze, staring at each other, caught between what almost happened and what was about to. The slam of the car door outside sent a chill through me. Claire's eyes darted to the window, then back to me, panic flickering across her face. "No one should be here," she whispered. Before I could answer, the front door opened. Heavy footsteps crossed the hall. My stomach sank. "Claire?" The voice was unmistakable. "My father." I staggered back a step, my pulse hammering. "He shouldn't have been here. He was gone." She said he was gone. Claire froze, her lips parted but no words coming. "Claire?" Dad's voice boomed again, closer this time. And then he stepped into the living room, his eyes sweeping over us. Me, standing too close to her. Her, pale and trembling. "What the hell is this?" Silence. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. "It's not," Claire started, but her voice faltered. Dad's eyes burned into me. You stay out of this. Something inside me snapped. No. You don't get to come back and act like you own her. The words flew out before I could stop them, before I could even think. Claire's hand shot out, gripping my wrist. Don't, she pleaded. Please. But it was too late. Dad's face darkened, his jaw clenching. What have you done? His voice was low, dangerous. Claire stepped between us, her back to me. Nothing, she said quickly. Too quickly. Nothing happened. Her words sliced through me sharper than his glare. Nothing. But she couldn't meet my eyes when she said it. Dad let out a bitter laugh. Of course. You'd rather ruin yourself than admit you're lonely. He spat the word like venom, then turned to me. And you're just a boy chasing after something you don't understand. The shame hit me like a punch. But beneath it, anger burned hot. Because I did understand. Maybe more than either of them thought. Claire's hand trembled as it lingered near mine, but she didn't take it. Instead, she whispered, "Go to your room." It wasn't a request. I stared at her, my chest aching. You're really going to let him talk for you? Her lips parted, but no sound came. She looked at me like she wanted to explain, to take it back, but fear held her in place. Dad muttered something under his breath, storming out of the room. The front door slammed again, shaking the walls. The silence after was unbearable. Claire stood rooted to the spot, her shoulders trembling. I stepped closer, my voice breaking. Was it nothing to you? She finally looked at me, eyes wet, guilt written all over her face. She didn't answer. And maybe that silence was worse than anything she could have said. Because it told me the truth, she wanted me, but she was too afraid to choose me. The house felt hollow after Dad stormed out, his footsteps still echoing in my head. I stood in the middle of the room, waiting, hoping, for Claire to say something. Anything. But she didn't. She just stood there, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, staring at the closed door. Finally, I broke the silence. You let him make it nothing. Her eyes snapped to mine, wet and sharp. You think it's that easy? Her voice trembled. You think I can just throw everything away? My life, my daughter, my reputation, because of this? Because of me, I corrected, my throat tight. Her lips parted, but she didn't deny it. That silence was enough to make my chest ache. I stepped closer, my voice low. I don't care if it's messy. I don't care if it looks wrong. My words caught, and I swallowed hard. I can't keep pretending I don't feel this. Her hands shook as she pressed them to her face. You're too young. You'll regret me. I shook my head fiercely. The only thing I'll regret is walking away when I know you feel it too. She froze, breathing hard. The air between us felt electric, stretched to its breaking point. Say it, I whispered. Her eyes searched mine, desperate, frightened, wanting. If I say it, everything changes. Then let it change. The words hung between us, reckless and raw. And then, with a choked sound, she closed the space between us. Her hand rose first, hesitant, trembling, as it touched my cheek. I leaned into it, every nerve alive, afraid she'd pull away. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered, barely audible, I see you. It wasn't a declaration, not the kind of confession I'd imagined in sleepless nights. But it was more real than anything I'd ever heard. Because that was what I wanted, not to be her escape, not to be a mistake, but to be seen. My chest tightened. My hand covered hers, pressing it to my skin like I could hold her there forever. We stood like that, breathing the same air, hearts racing. And then she leaned forward, not all the way, not enough to close the distance, but enough that her forehead rested against mine. I'm terrified, she admitted. So am I whispered back. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The choice hung in the air like a held breath. If we crossed that final line, nothing would be the same. If we stepped back, it might all disappear. Her thumb brushed against my cheek. My lips parted. But before anything more could happen, she pulled back slightly, her eyes searching mine with both longing and fear. I don't know if I'm strong enough. I held her gaze, steady. Then let me be strong for both of us. Her lips trembled, as if the answer was already on them. And in that fragile, unbearable pause, the world seemed to wait. The next morning, the house was quiet, but it felt different, not the hollow emptiness from before, but a fragile, tentative peace. Claire sat at the kitchen table, her coffee untouched, staring out the window at the soft morning light. I stepped in slowly, not sure if she wanted me here, but the way she looked up and gave me a small, almost shy smile told me everything I needed to know. "Morning," I said softly. "Morning," she replied, her voice a little steadier than yesterday. She shifted in her chair, letting me sit across from her. We didn't speak at first, just shared the quiet. But this time, there were no ghosts between us, no fear pressing on every word. The storm had passed, and though the wreckage remained, we were choosing to stand in it together. "I've thought a lot about last night," she said finally, breaking the silence. Her eyes met mine, open and honest. "About us. About what I want." "And?" I asked, leaning slightly forward, my hands resting on the table. "And I'm tired of pretending I can't want it," she admitted. "Tired of letting fear run my life." Her voice caught, and she took a deep breath. "I want to try. With you." My heart stuttered. I wanted to say everything at once, to tell her how long I'd waited to hear those words. But instead, I reached across the table and took her hand in mine, holding it gently, as if I could keep her safe just by touching her. "I want that too," I whispered. Her lips curved into a relieved, almost bashful smile. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a storybook moment. But it was ours, and that was enough. We sat there for a while, hands entwined, sharing the kind of quiet that only comes after fear has passed and honesty has taken its place. The mistakes, the regrets, the things we thought were too heavy to carry, they were still there, but we had chosen each other anyway. Later, as she prepared breakfast, I lingered in the doorway, watching her move with that quiet elegance that had captivated me from the beginning. She glanced back, caught my gaze, and for the first time, there was no hesitation in her eyes, just warmth, trust, and a small, unspoken promise. We didn't need grand declarations. The small moments, her laughter over burnt toast, the way she poured my coffee just right, the brush of her hand against mine as we passed in the kitchen, were enough to tell the story we'd been too afraid to say aloud. Love, I realized, didn't have to be dramatic or perfect. Sometimes, it was quiet, messy, human, and that made it real. We had crossed a line neither of us knew we could, and now, for the first time, we could stand on the other side together. And as the morning sun filled the room, I couldn't help but wonder, how many more small, perfect moments were waiting for us. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?